Ciao Milanisti, it's your boy Kush in the Milan corner. Finally guys, after weeks of negotiations, reports, ups and downs, Paolo Maldini and Ricky Masada have decided to renew their contracts, which is the first player that they're going to be going after this renewal. I have Matt Santangelo to talk about that. As a matter of fact, I was in the middle of the conversation with Matt when this news actually broke. So I'm actually going to stop you here because what we pretty much talked about might be happening. So Vitiello is saying that he has signed the agreement. And as you guys can tell, I'm not in the studio. I got the beautiful lake right behind me, but this is a big piece of news and I felt like I owe you guys a video. And before I jump into the conversation with Matt, guys, I just want to remind you to download the OneFootball app. Milanisti, the best place to get information on football is the OneFootball app. These guys from OneFootball cover over 160 leagues. I didn't even know there were 160 football leagues out there, but these guys cover them. They also cover them in 16 different languages. They have match highlights, transfer mercato rumors, everything. Paolo Maldini's renewal, they got it there. Lukaku coming back to Inter, yeah, you can find that out there too. Once again, guys, the link is in the description. Download the app and be in the know in the world of football. Is there a degree of frustration that you have towards the whole delay in this process and how much back and forth there's been?
There's a lot of frustration. I think, the feelings are mutual amongst Milan fans. I think some are reacting more heavily, more intensely and emotional towards it than I am. I just think we're kind of numb to some of these things not being as smoothly done as maybe other clubs and as we would hope. But I think that this is pretty obvious that once, Maldini and Mazzara were the ones pulling the strings as far as the market is concerned, and they got second place the year prior. They also were in the hunt for the Scudetto, eventually got it. This thing should have been done way in advance, way before the whole Redbird acquisition, everything like that. So again, there's definitely a lot of frustration there because obviously we know with the market, things are forever changing. A lot of the targets that maybe Maldini and Mazzara had earmarked for months, you could see how things change, right? Talks break down. You allow that time for others to come in and maybe take the players that you want and you've been working for. So definitely a lot of frustration. I think, again, we have to wait and see when these renewals get done. Hopefully they do get done very soon. That should hopefully open the floodgates for the rest of the market to commence, and then we can get to work because Milan, though just winning the Scudetto, still have a lot of holes to fill.
Let's start all the way from the back end, right? So we have the whole Sven Botman thing that kind of fell through. The initial expectation was Milan was probably going to be spending closer to like 30 million mark. After the kind of season we had and the clean sheets we had and the good defensive quality we had, do we really need to spend all that money? We know we're not a very rich club. Do we need to spend that big an amount of money on a center back?
This one's tricky for me because I think we've talked about this quite a few times on this on your channel here, Kush, about Botman would be a great addition. We've always stressed how important it is for us to have depth and have a squad that's not only capable of competing in Serie A, but that can make that next step up in the Champions League. And you need to have depth. You need to have that second team be very strong too. And I think Botman would have been a great addition. But the more I look at it, the more I realize that maybe Milan are better served going for someone in that 18 to 20 million, something along the lines of that, where they can get someone who is still young, does have a great ceiling, and that can also play a big role for them in the season to come. So I don't necessarily think that they needed to get this sort of 30 to 40 million prize central defender because Kalulu and Tomori were fantastic. Simon Kjaer is going to come back, though we don't know how effective he's going to be. There is the need for two center backs. You would assume that because Romagnoli is leaving, unless there's a U-turn on there. So they didn't necessarily need a 30 million splash signing in the central defense, but they do need a central defender. That is a guarantee.
So Matteo Bonetti did tweet out in reference more to Renato Sanchez, and he talked about the fact that Milan doesn't need to spend all that money on signing Sanchez to replace Kessie. It might be better if they actually reallocate those funds to the right wing and central attacking midfield, and instead just kind of bank on Pobega and Yacine Adli's arrival alongside obviously Tonali and Benacer, and then we have Krunic for a little bit of depth.
I was never really sold on the whole Sanchez as the like-for-like replacement for Kessie. They do share a lot of similarities as far as how they play and what they can do, but I think Sanchez is a player that likes to go forward. He likes to be a little bit more involved in the final third, whereas Kessie, again, would make those runs, but he was more of a defensive type player that was really well suited for the double pivot. So if it's not going to be someone like Renato Sanchez, although I'd like someone who can get forward, who can pose a threat as a goal scorer, I still do believe they need to get another midfielder because we've seen injuries take its toll on this team. Yes, Krunic did a good job last year, but Bakayoko's leaving. Adli's new to the league. You have to see how he adapts, right? And it's Pobega as well. Though he has the Serie A experience at Spezia and Torino, playing at Milan it requires a lot more. There's a lot more pressure, a lot more expectation. So I think there needs to be a central midfield addition. Maybe, again, much like what I was thinking in the central defense conversation we just had, someone in that lower bracket, someone maybe 10 to 15 that still has a lot of upside. I know someone mentioned on my timeline Nandes from Cagliari, who just got relegated. That would be a pretty good shout. A player that has obvious potential Serie A experience, but that maybe would come at a little bit more of a reduced price.
Yeah, I mean, we did sign Empoli's Benacer at that point in time. No one knew who that was. So, these things can turn out pretty well.
And Kush, I mean, just want to make this point too. I mean, our hated rivals Inter just signed Aslani from Empoli for a pretty modest fee. So I think there's value there. If you're not going to spend and stretch the budget on players that you maybe think are more of established like star players, I still think there's more Benacer-like additions that Milan could look to explore.
So there are some fancy names that are getting thrown around. We got, so switching to the right wing, we got Asensio, we got HAKIM ZIYECH, and we got Zaniolo. Of these three, which one do you think is the most possible? Or I don't even know how to phrase this question. I feel like neither of them can probably happen. But which one do you think is, somewhat possible?
I think you could probably put Ziyech on at the highest level, because I think Milan have obviously been looking at him for a long time. Last summer they wanted him. The formula they couldn't quite get. I think the asking price was a little too high. Now it seems as though that Chelsea's really reshuffling that entire team. The attack, they're looking to get two wingers. I know they're working on Rafinha, potentially Ousmane Dembele if he doesn't re-up with Barcelona. So I think there's the opportunity that Milan have taken in the past to one club's trash is another club's treasure. And by no means am I saying Ziyech is a trash player. He's a class player. He'd be one of the better technical players Milan have had in some time. But I think this is the perfect opportunity for Milan to swoop in there, offer a very inexpensive loan, maybe share the wages, use the tax benefits to Milan's benefit on the wage bill, and get a player who is still in his prime, has that Champions League experience, did win the Champions League with Chelsea, and was a really good figure for Ajax. So I put Ziyech one. Second, I'd probably put Asensio because, again, his contract is running down. Much like what I said with Ziyech, they can maybe use some tax benefits there to reduce that salary because it is quite high from what he's currently earning at Real Madrid. And I think Zaniolo, if the asking price is going to be too much, it would be a domestic transfer. Two, the injury concerns are still something that I'm not quite sure on. And three, I think the ask price is going to be somewhere between 40 to 50 million. And I just don't see Milan stretching the budget for that type of player with that much risk and at that fee.
So one of the things that was concerning me a little bit was as the title winners last season, we had scored 69 goals. No team has won the title scoring less than 70 goals in the last 10 seasons. We're the first ones to do it. That means we do need a little bit of help in attack as well. We had a lot of clean sheets, but we sometimes struggled to put the ball in the net. Now we pretty much brought in Divock Origi. Do you think this is, because I think this is it. I don't think we're signing any more center forwards, seeing how Milan's budget has been. Do you think this is enough for next season?
I think it is enough, and it's really ultimately what I expected, right? I think if everyone was coming into the summer thinking we're going to get this sort of 40 million type signing like a Scamacca or Jonathan David or someone of that caliber, I think they were fooling themselves. They were a little bit more in denial because I think that they thought that we won the Scudetto, we have Giroud and Ibrahimovic are aging, we need to get someone there long term. And in most cases, I would agree with that. And I would say I'd still agree with that. But from a more realistic standpoint, I just named two players who are older that Milan brought in for what? 1 million, 2 million combined between Ibrahimovic and Giroud. So I think it's pretty obvious that the way they're assessing the market, I think they look at the ballooning prices for strikers and they realize we're not quite there yet where we can spend the sum of money to get our absolute top guy and the guy that we think and envision to be the star. I mean, last summer, Kush, remember we were having these conversations about Vlahovic and we were thinking 50 million is kind of a lot. He went for 70 million to Juve. So I think Milan, the hope is that they're going to get to that position where they can spend significant on this position because it's the position that a lot of clubs really do lack. But I think Origi in the short term is 27. He's a flexible player. He's played in a high press high-octane system at Klopp. He's won trophies. He's scored big goals. He has the experience. Let's see what Origi could do.
A lot of people are saying, you know, we're getting somebody's reserve player. Well, sometimes that's how you can build a really good team. We got Theo Hernandez. He was a reserve player for Real Madrid behind Marcelo. So, and we see what his quality is. So now that Origi is going to get more consistent play time, for all we know, he's going to be like a 23, 25 goal scorer a season kind of player. So he does seem like good quality, has important goals in the Champions League. So I think he's a decent addition, and I completely makes sense with the budget that Milan has. He's probably it. Now, behind the striker, as you said, the service that he gets is the rumors are Charles De Ketelaere, and then there's Paulo Dybala. Do you see either of those two guys coming to Milan?
Dybala I see as a long shot. The only way I see Dybala arriving is if Inter find it in their budget that they can't make that deal happen. They can't meet his demands. It gets to a point where he doesn't want to go abroad. He wants to stay in Italy. And would he go to Napoli? I don't think so. Would he?
All right, so I'm actually going to stop you here because what we pretty much talked about might be happening. So Vitiello is saying that he has signed the agreement. After a long day, he's accepting the conditions of the contract sent this morning.
So Maldini and Mazzara are signing.
At least Vitiello is saying this.
Okay.
Fairly reliable, but we'll find out what happens. Going back to that, CDK and Dybala.
So I think with Dybala, the only way this deal potentially happens is if Inter's sort of groundwork that they laid for a potential deal with him falls through. They just did get Romelu Lukaku to link back up with Lautaro Martinez. They did spend a pretty significant amount on Joaquin Correa last year from Lazio. So do they go after another expensive player in that similar role? Would Correa want to be the fourth option as a backup player when you spend $30 million? I don't know. The more I look at the additions that Inter have made, the less I believe that maybe Dybala works for them. And with that being said, I think it would really only come down to whether or not Dybala wants to test the market abroad. Obviously, there's interest, maybe not at the ask price for wages that he's looking for. That's where maybe Milan could swoop in, give him $4.5 million with some bonuses attached at the end. And now you're looking at a premium player who you don't have to splash a big transfer fee on, that knows the league. You scalp him from a rival. You take him out from underneath a club that you just beat out for the Scudetto and Inter. So you weaken your rivals and you strengthen your squad in the area of need at the same time. So that's really the only way I see that happening. CDK, I think it's a true possibility. I just really worry that we're going to fall to the same outcome that we saw with Botman, where the Premier League side, like a Leicester or Leeds, if they do get that Rafinha deal done, come in, offer him a little bit more, offer him the opportunity to play in the Premier League, but he does want to play in the Champions League. And that's something that Milan really has to leverage in any negotiation they enter for any player.
Yeah, and that's what it kind of feels like. Is like Milan's becoming like the scouts for all these smaller leagues and all these big teams, right? So we kind of scout the player, we find their profile, the press kind of leaks it, and then the bigger clubs kind of just go in and just pay a higher wage. Or a higher transfer fee. So there you have it, Milanisti. That was my conversation with Matt Santangelo. A big day for Milan. Maldini's renewal was the sticking point. Now that that is complete and Milan has their managers back again, we can actually pursue some good quality players. I don't know if much is going to change in the budget. I don't know if much is going to change in the profiles, but at least we will start sanctioning some deals and getting them done. And once again, guys, I want to thank you guys for supporting the channel, watching these videos when I'm not even in the studio. Next video is going to be from the studio, but thank you so much for watching, and make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit the bell notification so you can watch the Milan Corner videos as soon as I upload them. And as always, Forza Milan! Grazie mille e ciao tutti!